Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Big Hoss Show. This will be the first podcast that we will be doing. Today, we will be starting on the history of the United States of America. But if you are going to understand the history of the United States, you have to start from the beginning, and that would most likely be, in my personal opinion, with Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus was born in 1451. Actually, he was born on August 25th. No, between August 25th and October 31, in 1451 in Gioia, in what is now Italy. His parents were Domenico Colombo, a wool weaver, and Susan Font Rosa. I have the names pulled up. No, I cannot pronounce them. As a young man, he became skilled in sailing, map making, and navigation, which shaped his future ambitions, which is kind of how he got to America, but we won't skip that part. He dreamed of a westward route to Asia. Columbus believed that he could reach Asia by sailing west across the Atlantic instead of around Africa. Most experts at the time thought the ocean was too wide, but Columbus underestimated Earth's size and insisted the route was possible. After years of his own recollection, he finally gained support from the King of Ferdinand and Queen Elizabeth of Spain to go on such a voyage. They were able to fund it. The first voyage, in 1492, his ships were cut to sail and ready to go. The ships that he sailed with, there was three of them. You have the Santa Maria, the Pinta, and the Nina. But instead of reaching Asia, he landed in the Caribbean, encountering the indigenous peoples who lived there. He believed he had reached islands near Asia, not a new continent. In the later voyages, before I move on to the later voyages, the people that we know as Indians are not Indians. They're actually, when Christopher Columbus climbed off the boat, he thought he was in India, which is why he called the people Indians, even though they were Native Americans. And apparently he thought it was a good idea to teach them how to read, make them Christians, and make them just like people back in England. That's not really how it worked out. Later voyages that he made were in 1493 to 1502. He made 4 voyages in that time. One in 1492, 1493, 1498, and 1502. During these trips, he explored the Caribbean, including Cuba, Hispaniola, and parts of the Central and South America. He established Spanish colonies, faced conflicts with settlers and indigenous peoples. He was eventually removed as governor due to I can't even talk today. Basically, he was removed as governor due to them saying he was too harsh of a ruler. Governorship and conversity. So basically, he served as the first governor of the Indies from 1492 to 1499. His rule was marked by severe punishments, forced labor, violence against indigenous populations. Because of this, he was arrested, and he returned to Spain in chains, though he was later freed. In the final years of his life, from 1502 to 1506, Columbus continued to insist he had reached Asia, even after others realized the lands were part of a new continent. He eventually died on May 20th, 1506, in Valladolid, Spain, at the age of 54. He was buried at Seville Cathedral. So, that's basically his whole life in a nutshell. But here's what I have for his legacy. I mean, the positive things for his legacy. He did multiple voyages that connected Europe into the Americas, which for America, without him, even though he probably wasn't the best ruler at first, would be impossible. And the negative side of him finding America was enslavement and suffering of indigenous people, forced labor systems, spread of disease, But a lot of modern historians emphasize the impact on native populations and the consequences of colonization. So he found what is now called the America, the continent. But he landed in Cuba, so that's kind of what we consider the South. Another person who was born in 1580, so about 78 years after Christopher Columbus died, but not much happened in between. So the next most popular person that could shine a little light on the story, his name was John Smith. I know, the most average name anybody could come up with. But here he is. He was baptized January 6, 1580 in Willoughby, Yorkshire, England. His parents, George and Alice Smith, were yeomen, farmers, middle-class landowners who worked their own land. Smith, well, he was kind of adventurous from a young age. After being orphaned as a teenager, he decided to leave home and pursue a life of travel and military service, which he would come to become very good at. A soldier of fortune in Europe with what he was called from 1596 to 1604, Smith spent his early adulthood fighting in wars across Europe because he joined the military service. He fought in conflicts involving the Dutch Republic, the Holy Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and he also served under the Prince of Transylvania, and he was even knighted for his services. Smith was claimed he was captured by Ottoman forces and sold into slavery and later escaped. Not 100% sure if that was true, though. Some historians question part of his story, but it appears in his own writings. These experiences shaped him into a tough, resourceful leader, skills he later would use in America. He would later go on to join the Virginia Company in 1606, because after returning to England, Smith joined the Virginia Company, which planned to establish a colony in North America. In December of 1606, he set sail for a new world aboard the Susan Constant, Godspeed, and Discovery. The founding of Jamestown happened in 1607 because Smith arrived in Virginia in May of 1607 and helped establish Jamestown, the first permanent English settlement in North America. The challenges they acquired was the colony struggled with disease, starvation, poor leadership, and conflict with local tribes. Because how would you feel if someone was to come, sit in your front yard, and claim it as theirs? Smith quickly became a central figure because of his discipline and survival skills. His relationship with the Powhatan people helped him in many ways. Smith's interactions with the people were crucial. Smith claimed that Pocahontas, the daughter of the chief of the Powhatans, saved his life during a ritual execution. Many historians believe the event may have been a ceremonial adoption rather than a literal rescue. Still, Pocahontas did help mitigate the relations between the English and the Powhatan people. They did do trading. Because of Smith, negotiated for food and attempted to maintain peace through tension, though tensions were constant. He became a leader of Jamestown in 1608. He actually became the colony's president. His leadership style was here nor there. He enforced strict rules that will not work, and one of his most famous things is that he said, which I personally like, is, "He that will not work shall not eat." He organized food production, built defenses, and mapped the region. His leadership helped stabilize the colony during the most fragile years. In 1609, he was badly injured in a gunpowder explosion. He returned to England for a treatment and never went back to Jamestown. In 1614, after recovering, Smith explored the northeastern coast of North America. He mapped it and named it New England, producing some of the earliest detailed charts of the region. His maps were widely used by later settlers. Writing in later life in 1615, Smith spent his final years as an author and promoter of colonization. His major works were he wrote several influential books, including The Description of New England, General Historia of Virginia. These works described as the geography, resources, and people of the New World, encouraging English migration. John Smith died on June 21st, 1631, in London at the age of 51. Pocahontas, an in-depth life story for her, which they did eventually get married because Pocahontas was John Smith's wife. She was born in 1596 in the Powhatan Confederacy in the region of present-day Virginia. Her real names were in Indian, which were Amonut and Matokea, more of a private family name. Pocahontas was a nickname meaning playful one. She was the daughter of Washaka, also known as Chief Powhatan, the powerful leader of a network of 30-plus Algonquian-speaking tribes. Little is known about her mother. Powhatan tradition often kept maternal identities private. As a child, she would have learned agriculture, gathering food and preparation, cultural transitions, diplomacy, and communication between tribes. She was not a princess in the European sense, but she was the daughter of the paramount chief. In 1607, she had her first contact with the English. Pocahontas was first encountered the English when they arrived in Jamestown in May of 1607. She was likely around 10 to 12 years old at the time. The John Smith rescue story was later described as John Smith later wrote that Pocahontas saved him from the execution by placing herself over him. Modern historians debate this heavily. It may have been a ceremonial adoption ritual, not a real execution. Smith only wrote this story years later after Pocahontas was already famous. Britannica notes that Smith's account in the reason she became famous, but its accuracy is uncertain. Regardless, Pocahontas did play a role in the mediating early relations between the English and the Powhatan people. She more was of a role of a culture meditator from in 1607. When Pocahontas visited Jamestown, she with other Powhatan emissaries, she helped deliver food to starving colonists, acted as a messenger between her father and the English, and helped maintain periods of peace. Her presence symbolized diplomacy through relations between the groups were often tense. She was abducted by the English in 1613. During a rising conflict, Pocahontas was kidnapped by English Captain Samuel Argyle. She was held hostage to force the chief Powhatan into negotiations. During captivity, she was taught English and customs and even Christianity. This period changed her life permanently. In 1614, while in captivity, Pocahontas converted to Christianity and took the name Rebecca. She met John Rolfe, an English tobacco planter. They married in 1614, a union that created a temporary peace known as the Peace of Pocahontas. In 1615, she gave birth to their first son, Thomas Rolfe. Their marriage was politically significant. It eased tensions between the English and Powhatan Confederacy. It symbolized the possibility of coexistence, though this peace was fragile and temporary. In 1616, she made it to England. She traveled to England with her son and her husband. She was presented to English society as Lady Rebecca Wolfe. The Virginia Company used her as a symbol to promote colonization. She met English leaders and was portrayed as in engravings, including the famous 1616 portrait by Simon de Pass. Her time in England showed how the English wanted to frame her story as proof of Native Americans could be civilized, as a promotional tool investment in Virginia. In 1617, specifically in March, Pocahontas became gravely ill while preparing to return to Virginia. She died in Gravesend, England, at about 20 to 21 years old. She was buried at St. George Church in Gravesend. The exact cause of death is still unknown. Theories include pneumonia, tuberculosis, or dysentery. Some Powhatan oral transitions suggest poisoning, but there is no historical proof. Her legacy is left behind and complex and is often misunderstood. While historically accurate, she was a Powhatan woman who played a diplomatic role. She was kidnapped, converted, and married John Wolfe. She traveled to England and became a symbol of colonization. What is a myth is a romantic relationship with John Smith. She was a child. Smith was 27. The dramatic rescue story was as popularly told. The idea that she freely chose to assimilate into English culture. Her real impact was her marriage helped create temporary peace. Her story became central to American colonial mythology. She remains a symbol of cultural encounter and survival, and the complicated history between native people and the European settlers. Well, folks, that is the first episode on the Telling Stories podcast. Make sure you turn in for another episode, and hopefully you like this one. Have a good day.